So it's important for me to say that I'm not here to try to change your rules regarding the whip. That is something for yourself to discuss. But I will just, this one? Everyone, okay. So I will just give you an understanding of what we have done in Sweden and actually in whole Scandinavia. It has been a long journey for us. So let me just give you a brief view of Scandinavian racing. For those of you who don't know, of course, it's the northern part of Europe. It's a mixture of dirt racing and turf racing. We have complete turf tracks in Copenhagen and Gothenburg, and combined tracks in Stockholm and Oslo with both dirt and turf, and only dirt racing in Malmö in Sweden. So it's a very integrated community where there's only 1 hour's flight between the capitals of the 3 countries, which means that all our jockeys are practically the same in the 3 countries, so which makes it easier to implement new rules. And in Sweden, we have about 30% of our starting horses are from abroad, either from Denmark or Norway. Furthermore, the betting is about 40 to 50% on a race day in Sweden. The betting would come from Denmark and Norway. And this is just an understanding of the magnitude of racing in Scandinavia. Sweden is the biggest country with about 800 horses in training and twice as much racing as the other 2 countries. So about 1,400 horses in training in Scandinavia and just about 1,000 races a year. So this gives an understanding of why we work so much together in Scandinavia. And as I said, the betting is very much integrated. You can bet to all race days in the other countries. From Denmark, you can bet to Sweden and Norway, and the other way around. So let's see at the timeline of the whip. It started a very long time ago. It actually was quite embarrassing when we looked at it, but in 1976, the whip was forbidden by law in Norway. Use of whip was illegal at that point, and the change came about due to a lengthy pressure from animal rights organizations at the time. The trotting organization changed the rule from one day to another, but jockeys objected, so they were eventually allowed to carry a whip during the races for safety measures. During the 90s, Sweden went from a number of 10 strokes to 5 strokes on the horse. But the real change came in 2009, where the Norwegian removed the whip entirely. And that came after 30 years of no dangerous incidents during race riding, so they were quite comfortable with taking away the whip because they could not relate any dangerous situations to the whip. And they have quite a tight track, so you would eventually see problems if there were any problems. So Denmark and Sweden followed a little bit, at least, from 5 to 3 strikes and in 2009. And it's important to understand that we account for a tap on the shoulder is accounting for 1 strike. But the real change came about in 2011, where strikes on the shoulder were accounted for, and we took away the whip in 2-year-old races and in hurdle and steeplechase races, actually, for safety reasons. And the studies after that change, we saw less fatal injuries in the national hunt races. So most went fine for a period where the changes were to strengthen the deterrent for whip use to harder penalties for jockeys in breach of the rules. And in the end, a jockey in breach with the rules would get a fine of 50 to 75% of his riding fee would be removed, plus a lengthy suspension. So this went fine for a number of years until a harness driver in 2021 was prohibited by civil authorities to carry a whip during race driving, I should say. At the same time, a few jockeys were reported for animal abuse, as the whip has left marks on the horse. So it's really important to understand that in Sweden, if a person is accused of animal abuse, it's obligatory for the authorities to prosecute the person, and eventually it could lead to an animal ban, which means that you cannot have a bird at home, you cannot have a dog, you're entirely animal. You can never keep an animal. But that's, of course, that's the worst incident. So these incidents escalated our work with the whip rules. So eventually, in April 2022, no whip use is allowed in all Scandinavian countries, including a tap on the shoulder. So they are not allowed to tap on the shoulder. They're allowed to carry the whip for safety reasons, but they're not allowed to hit the horse at any time. So, as you can imagine, the level of cooperation in Scandinavia is quite comprehensive. We founded a rules committee in 2020 and started to work with the common rule book, which was published in 2021. Still, there are minor differences in the three countries, and that was one of the differences that we started to work on was the whip rules, as Norway had another whip rule at the time. So during that work, the Swedish Toad, they did a survey on horse welfare that I would like to mention briefly. In fact, they did two surveys in 2021, from which I've extracted the most important points of interest. So the question was in the survey, in the past year, have you noticed cases where horses are being badly treated within the framework of competitions ATG offers odds on? And that could be anywhere in the world where ATG, the Swedish Toad, has gambling. So 30% answered yes. They had noticed that horses are being badly treated, and that's from about 1.23 million customers at the betting company, 30%. Out of those 30%, 91% related it to hard or too frequent use of the crop, the whip, sorry. Furthermore, 25% of all respondents actively refrain from betting on races with a specific country because of horses have been treated badly, which means if they have seen something bad happen in England or France or wherever, I'm not here to judge any countries, but then they would not bet to the country. 25% of your customers. And in our countries, well, the highest income comes from betting. So obviously it's very important to see what our customers tells us. So as the timeline showed earlier, the whip rule has been an ongoing process for many years in Scandinavia, where you could say it all started in 1976, so really a long time ago. So in 2021, we got the assignment from the stakeholders to review the whip rules. In the process, we went back to the stakeholders, asked them to point us in the right direction. We asked them one or two solutions. Should we have no whip at all, or would you start with three whips on the 3 taps on the shoulder? But they were very clear. They didn't want any taps on the shoulders. They wanted us to take away the whip. So that pushed us in this direction. And another strong factor was obviously the public perception, in particular the main source of income, the punters, who made a very clear statement through the ATG survey. So before I talk about the writing of the whip rule, I would like to start with showing a clip from Norway. It's an older clip, but it illustrates what we've tried to prevent. So if you look at the rider in the yellow and red colors, he would soon use the reins as sort of a whip. He will swing the rein to the head and to the ears, and that was like something we didn't want to see. If we took away the whip, we didn't want to see this as a result. You can see the reins. He tried to slap the horse with the reins, and then, I mean, that's not the issue here. So the writing of the rule was quite complex. you have to look at especially the yellow marked text that during a race the rider must ride with both hands on the horse's withers or neck, which actually means you can never remove the hands from the neck. And that was not the intention. If you read it very literally, you could understand that, but we informed jockeys and stakeholders that of course you're allowed to change your hands on the reins, but not slap the horse. So it could lead to a potential strike. So we agreed to have a meeting with the Jockeys Association, and then the yellow part was removed. In effect, the change was not that big. We changed it to the rules that just clarifies that you cannot hit the whip, hit the horse with the reins. You cannot wave them towards the eye. You cannot use the whip and wave in front of the eyes of the horse. In addition, it allows the new riding allows the rider to change hands, which was never the point to prohibit that. So now I will just show a short clip for probably about a month or two after the new rules was implemented, and just to give you an idea how the new form of racing looks like in Sweden. So you see they're swinging a little bit with the hands, but nothing to hurt the horse in any means. So there's still a winner. They're still fighting for the win, and it looks acceptable to my eyes and probably also to the public's eyes. So what do we know so far? Obviously, it's still very early days. It's only a change that was made last year, but these are our experiences so far. So we've spoken to the handicapper. The handicapper estimates that the horses are not running slower than they used to. We still have the same top trainers and same top jockeys. The rankings has not changed between the riders and jockeys. So that is still the same. So no complaints from the riders and trainers then. And we see no change in the results that could justify any other conclusions. So you could argue that it would affect the breed, but it's interesting to see that actually there's coming a Breeders' Cup 2-year-old winner out of a horse called On Pearl. She was out of a Swedish-bred mare who won a classic race in Norway without use of the whip. That mare has been used to produce a Breeders' Cup winner. So that's quite interesting to me that a horse from a society without the whip can win at one of the best countries in the world. So, but more important, the stewards experienced less interference so far in 2022 and 2023. We rarely see any dangerous riding anymore in Scandinavia. And especially on the minor interferences, we have seen 10% less minor interference compared to 2021, where we had the old rules. So it's some start of a conclusion, but it's premature to draw any definite conclusions about the issue. I'll show just a short clip of what I mean with minor interference. You have to look at the rider in the yellow cap, the black silks. Soon he will use his left-handed whip, and he will soon wave with the whip in front of the horse's eye. See here, and there's a minor interference. I'm not here to judge, but you cannot rule out that there's a correlation between the use of whip and the minor interference, and that's the sort of interference that we are seeing much less of in Scandinavia these days. So, not at least, the Swedish Toad also says we see no negative impact on the betting. Rather, they see actually a positive correlation between the betting and how the whip rules are in the certain countries. So that's interesting. Furthermore, ATG's recent study on the next generation tells us that no matter what customer group or punting type you are, all groups thinks that horse welfare is one of the most important topics to prioritize in the future. So that's the latest survey that the Swedish Toad has done, which point us in the right direction to at least say that we made the right move to think about the whip as an important horse welfare issue. But obviously there are other issues. So overall, the new whip rules has been positively received by owners, trainers, and even jockeys, though obviously not all jockeys. Media has been very positive as they now feel they're able to produce on TV for a broader audience. And from my perspective, I see no negative impact on the sport. That the doubters would believe would be the case. As we hear more and more these days, horses come first. So for me, personally, it do not make sense to strike the animal that we all love. So thank you. You're welcome to ask any questions.
Bo potem będziemy mieli też czas na koniec zadania pytań. Proszę bardzo.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Raz. Dzień dobry, Denis. Jakub Kasprzak, Polski Klub Wyścigów Konnych. Mam pytanie odnośnie użycia bata podczas treningu w Skandynawii. Czy to jest dozwolone, czy również jest zabronione?
No, actually it's not allowed. It's the same rules we have on a daily basis. And it has been for many years that the rules we have on the racetrack applies in training. So no, it's not allowed.
I jeszcze drugie pytanie. Ponieważ współpracujemy razem na poziomie MHF odnośnie różnych kwestii wyścigowych, czy twoim zdaniem, wiedząc jakie są różnice w kwestii użycia bata, Australia, Stany Zjednoczone, Turcja, Emiraty Arabskie, Polska, Niemcy, czy twoim zdaniem jest w ogóle szansa, żeby doprowadzić to wszystko do jednego poziomu? Ja nie mówię, czy to ma być bez bata, czy z batem, tylko kwestia ujednolicenia, że na przykład we wszystkich krajach będzie obowiązywać ten sam limit uderzeń batem.
That would be ideal, definitely. But I think it's only possible to reach a common consensus if the number is 0. And I think that's where eventually we will all, I say now that we will be at 0 at some point. I don't know if for some countries it will probably be 2050, but for other countries it will be earlier. You have all countries like France, England, Germany, and even America, which are quite free with the rules. They are down to 6 in America. So it's I think we're all going towards 0, but it's like on the highway. It's on a different speed. Some countries are fast, and yeah, probably Germany is the next country to reach 0 in my opinion. But it would be nice with the same rules inside racing, but this is a rule where I think we can only agree on 0.
Ja się nazywam Andrzej Rakowiecki. A chodzi mi o to, czy jest taka świadomość, jeśli chodzi o trenerów i jokejów, dlaczego nie należy używać bata? Czy to jest tylko opinia publiczna i wpływ środowiska ochrony zwierząt, czy to jest głębsza świadomość wynikająca z tego, co jest przyczyną tego, że należy tego nie robić?
I think the perception level is probably as different as the public opinion and perception. I'm very much sure that some of our jockeys that are accused of animal abuse, they would know that it's wrong and they see the risks. So it's not only public perception, it's it's about they could eventually lose their job as a jockey in the future. But I think the perception with trainers and jockeys, of course, we are very conservative sport, so we don't like to make changes in horse racing, and of course jockeys and trainers think that we should. I mean, if they could win a race just by whipping the horse, yeah, why not? But they always also forget. So I have a jockey last week who said to me, why can't we use the whip? I would have won the race. Yeah, but the other one would also have used the whip. So it's 1-1. And as studies says, we cannot prove that that it helps to whip the horse. We can't see it on the racing times. And you can't see it in England and America either, when they have gone down from 12, 15 hits to 5 or 6. The horses are still at the same level. They are not getting worse. So I think eventually people will find out that it doesn't help and find other methods. Was that an answer to your question?
Ja bym chciał jeszcze jedną rzecz poruszyć. W takim razie, czy w tym procesie przechodzenia od lat 70. kiedykolwiek stosowaliście taki program szkoleniowy, który by uświadamiał i trenerom, i jokejom, że użycie bata nie wpływa na wynik, natomiast ewentualnie go pogarsza. Chodzi mi o programy szkoleniowe, bo zmiana nie nastąpi, kiedy nie będzie świadomości. Czyli czy ktokolwiek przekazuje informacje jokejom i trenerom, że użycie bata powoduje bardziej szkodliwy efekt, jeśli chodzi o mechanikę, fizjologię, cały aparat ruchu konia.
I know that there's been a lot of studies in Australia regarding the whip, that the horse do not increase their speed just because of the whip. So there are a lot of studies, but probably you're completely right that there's probably not the information towards trainers and riders at the moment that are pointed directly to trainers and riders to give them the correct information. But from the countries that have gone down in numbers on the whip, I think it's important that we countries do studies so we can inform you about what has happened, and I'm sure that studies from England will show that the performance of the horses are not lower now than it was 10 years ago when you could strike the horse more. So it's probably a question of better information, and you're right, I don't think it's enough what has been done until now.
Okay, dziękuję bardzo.
I know that this is primarily about racing, but we are part of a wider equestrian community. I was just wondering if in Scandinavia the likes of dressage, show jumping, eventing are under the same spotlight and considering amending their rules.
I'm not too sure about, especially in the dressage and show jumping, how the rules are, but they are under constant scrutiny for. I mean, they need to live up to the high horse welfare in Sweden. The only thing I know about is harness racing, where they actually have used a lighter writing of the rules. So you are at the moment you are allowed to give light encourage to a horse in a trotting race, and they made the change before we came, and that was why we ask our stakeholders, should it be no whip at all, or should it be 3 taps on the shoulder? The trotters have used light encouragement, and from a legal perspective, light encouragement, what is that? So, well, it's easier to judge 0 or a number.
Proszę Państwa, zrobimy 10